All right, everybody. So we're going to go ahead and get started. If anybody's coming from another meeting right now, they're going to be able to join us at a perfect amount of time. But really want to thank you all for joining us here today. My name is Reed Cordella. I'll be hosting today's session titled Your EX is CX, How Employee Development Can Revolutionize Contact Centers. So I know we've got a lot of attendees from all over the place, some exec vision customers, some not, some partners of ours, some thought leaders, of course, which is going to be our panel today. But this is part of our inaugural Momentum 2020 event. And we're just really excited to be having this. Of course, it's been a crazy year for everybody. So it's really great that we can all kind of tune away from our tasks for the day and learn something new that's hopefully going to change the way our organizations coach in call centers. So I want to give a quick thank you to our event sponsors, Outreach, Zoom Info, Connect and Sell, AirCall, Sapper Consulting, ScaleX, and Speckit. And please visit the sponsor pages on Momentum on the website if you guys are interested about these great organizations and partnering with them as we have ourselves. Now, a few housekeeping items before we get started. We are recording this session and we'll be sharing it with everybody who had signed up for or registered for the event. Now, so if you haven't gotten your registration confirmation, feel free to reach out to me as well, or even Angela, who introduced us all, to get into the event. And if you have any technical issues, please enter them in the chat window. I'm happy to take those. If you have any questions for our speakers, please enter them in the QA window as well. And Gabe will be managing those, but I can back him up too. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce you guys your moderator, Gabe Larson. Now, he's an international sales consultant with over 15 years of experience. Currently serves as Vice President of Growth at Customer, first customer service platform built with the buyer in mind, which is really interesting to going to tie into our session today. His accolades include being named top sales development thought leader by InsideSales.com, 25 most influential inside sales professionals of the AISP, and the Utah Sales and Marketer of the Year Sammy Award for 2018. And the passion Gabe has for a customer journey made him an obvious fit for this session. And I know it's going to make for a really great use of time, and appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedules for this. And without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Gabe Larson.
Thank you. That was a longer introduction than probably was needed, but excited to be here today and excited to talk about two really important topics, EX and CX, and how they come together. We do want this to be interactive, so before I have the panel introduce themselves, would love for you guys to just go into the chat and tell us your name and where you're from. Let's make sure, again, any questions you have during the event, would love to see that chat open up, and we'll try to take those questions as they come for the group. And while we're doing that, let's have the panel just introduce themselves briefly. Cheryl, if we can, let's start with you.
Sure can. Hi, thank you everybody. My name is Cheryl China. I am the Director of Credit Card Servicing at Citizens Bank. We're based out of Rhode Island. I've been in banking for 23 years and part of call centers. I started in a call center as an agent myself and love my job. Thank you.
Great, thanks for being here. Lindsay, over to you.
Hi, thank you. My name is Lindsay Sturdivant. I am the Director of Contact Center and Talent Development for Imperial Supplies out of Green Bay, Wisconsin. I have been in a variety of different roles, from sales to new business acquisition and account management for the last 13 years.
Awesome. Go Packers, right, Lindsay?
Go Pack.
You guys missed it, but the pre-show here was all about the Packers. I couldn't participate. Was. I'm a Niners fan, so I couldn't get into that. I didn't mean to say that out loud, Lindsay. Sorry. Chris, over to you.
Hi, I'm Chris Zakiris. I'm head of inside sales at TWFG. I have over 20 years in the insurance industry. I've managed in call centers at Travelers and USAA. I've also led a field sales team for GE. Grew up outside of York, Pennsylvania, attended Temple University, moved around the country. I'm in a much warmer area than the Packers right now. It's cooled down to about 90 degrees here, and I'm excited to be here.
Love it. All right, Brian.
Go Pack Go. I thought I'd just start with that. Brian Elsesser with AirCall. AirCall is a cloud-based phone system that helps sales and support teams get more efficient and productive. I am the Senior Director of Sales Development there and have been leading sales and sales development teams there for close to 10 years. Well, not there, but in SaaS for close to 10 years. If I was there for 10 years, then I'm the founder, and I'm not the founder.
I love it. It almost seems like we're in the wrong panel. Maybe we should be talking football here today. You guys will have to keep bringing that in. I am a football fan, so bring it in at will. Let's dive into the topic at hand. Now that we've taken just a minute to understand who's on the panel, want to kind of set up at a high level and talk a little bit about this idea. We have COVID. It's obviously impacted employee engagement, but I'm curious how each of you have experienced this post-COVID engagement, and what are you starting to do about it to make sure that employee engagement stays at a level that is acceptable? And Chris, let's start with you.
Well, sure. I have found with COVID, employees working from home either get hyper productive or they get not quite as productive. And I think never before has, if you have 15 people or 20 people or 30, never before has that meant 15 or 20 or 30 different management styles than it does now. And never, you have to be more in tune with what your people are thinking, feeling, experiencing, I think now more than ever. So as far as that goes, I think a daily team huddle is a mandatory, over Zoom or Teams or whatever you may have. If you have a bigger team, you might want to consider separating that out into 2 separate sessions. But I think just a daily team huddle, you don't necessarily have to run it. In fact, I let a different rep run it, throughout the week just to keep people a little more engaged. There don't have to be any set topics. Sometimes I just give updates. Sometimes we just talk more philosophically. Sometimes we tell stories. Sometimes they go 5 minutes, sometimes they go 20, but just something brief daily throughout the day. And then I conduct bi-weekly coaching sessions with my direct reports. I've made it so folks are a little more prepared going into those sessions, just being conscious about how much time is allotted and, just making sure that phone calls have been listened to and the agendas are both set from both ends. So just making the best use of our time and then just constant communication across the board.
Yeah. I mean, the huddle stuff, you just can't get away from that. It's a different format. I love the in-person huddles, but these virtual huddles, making them interesting, keeping them consistent, I do think makes a big difference. Brian, your thoughts on this?
Yeah, and keeping them engaging, right? You got to have the ability in order to bring that team in and get pumped up around the idea or whatever the activity is, because virtual is so different. I think it's interesting. Chris mentioned management styles and how that has really maybe not changed, but the focus is now a little bit different in a remote environment. I think a lot of that comes from trust, right? We are now forced to trust our teams in a different way. I think it's different when you're all sitting in the same room and you're looking at the work being done and we're all doing it together, but all of a sudden now we have some level of autonomy here, and trust has never been highlighted more from a management perspective. We do a lot of different things in order to get that team engaged over at Air Call. First off is that energetic morning huddle, just to re-engage that. Got to have that energy there. We do a lot of call coachings. Managers are getting into the weeds, but also reps are getting into the weeds of what each other is doing, listening to calls, listening to what the progress is, providing feedback, and kind of collectively working this more as a team environment than probably we've ever done before.
Yeah, man, the engagement part, it does seem like it seems to be the thing that it was okay when we started. It was new and everyone I think was okay with it, but now that we've done it 50 times, it's not enough to get on Zoom anymore. You do have to kind of mix it up a little bit. I'm sure we'll hit that a little more because I'd love to hear about some of the ways you're actually doing that. Lindsay, let's continue. Thoughts on this from your side?
Sure. You know what? COVID really hasn't impacted our employee engagement from a sales perspective, a coaching perspective, even from a culture. We actually started to make a culture change about 2 years ago at Imperial, where we were really looking at changing our coaching from a very metric-driven type of coaching to a more of a behavior coaching culture. And once we clearly defined our roles, our responsibilities, expectations, and authorities within our sales teams, we implemented Exec Vision last year, and we haven't missed a beat. We actually deployed 150 sales reps remotely mid-March, and literally our productivity has increased, and we have not seen a decline in engagement whatsoever. Much to what Chris and Brian said, we did have to, make some small tweaks with virtual huddles and things like that, but for the most part, it's been a very positive experience for us.
Oh, wow. 150, you said, is that correct? 150.
Correct. Yep.
Wow. That's an impressive feat. I think some of us weren't quite ready for this change, but it sounds like you guys were on your guns, ready to rock and roll. And then Cheryl, let's have you bring out the last part here. How have you guys thought about employee engagement post-COVID, and what are you guys doing about it?
So a little bit different. So keep in mind, we're an older New England bank. Our technology, although has gotten so much better within the last 3 years, we initially weren't set up for work from home. So we were just starting to test the waters at the end of 2019. So we really had to scramble. We had third shift teams that we were just starting to transition to work from home. So, you know, we had, when March hit and they said everybody has to go home kind of thing, and that's pretty much what we did. We had all sorts of, you know, system and technology issues, and I know many companies have done this, which had a negative impact, especially on our, you know, our specialists and agent population. They were getting frustrated, they couldn't log in, you know, VPN issues, my headset's not working. We actually sent people home with towers, so it was a little bit different at the very beginning. But then once people started acclimating and the technology issues started to resolve themselves, and you know, we got a little bit better at it, let's face it, we found out that we've gotten some really positive results. So much like what Lindsay was saying, people like working from home. So now we have about 90% of our contact center workforce working from home. We also have branches too, by the way, as you know, again, a bank. So we brought in a lot of our branch folks, because our branch traffic, you know, came to an almost standstill. So our branch colleagues came into our contact center. We got them set up from work from home, because you can imagine with all of the banking between deferrals and PPP, it was extremely busy for us. So I think now that everything, you know, the dust has started to settle, you know, we're seeing more flexibility with schedules. We've got, you know, overtime when needed. People can work overtime a lot easier. You know, and I think there's just a positive momentum here. We're all just getting used to the Zoom, and I'm still struggling with Zoom. So Zoom and FaceTime and such. So, but I think that when, you know, all is said and done, probably, you know, again, probably about 90% of our population that is at home wants to stay at home. We've only had a handful of people that have said, I need to come back into the office, or I want to come back into the office.
Wow, was that surprising? I mean, I hear that the majority wanting to kind of stay at home. That must have caught you off guard just a little bit, correct?
I think so. It's hard for me. I'm in the office, so I'm a very social person. So I like that interaction with people. We were talking about that earlier, but we do have a few people. So those that, you know, those, for whatever reasons, they can't work at home. But we had one young girl just come back, and she lives in a little 1-bedroom apartment by herself. She said it was so isolating. I couldn't be there anymore. It was really hard for her. So it's taking a toll on her mental health as well. Like, come back, you know, whatever you need to do, just come back and work in the office.
Yeah. And I want to hit on that a little bit more, because it does seem like engagement is, for a long time, certainly there's always an emotional side to it, but certainly it's taken a kind of a step up.
Right.
With all the things that we're doing, and we're seeing that employee engagement affect the customer engagement to a real extreme. Let's continue down this path just for a minute more on the employee side of the house, and then we'll talk a little bit about how that reflects on the customer side of the house. Culture is something that we often talk about. It's such an important aspect, but cultures have literally had to transform themselves in this post-COVID world, or in this COVID world, whatever you want to refer to it as. Wondering how you guys have redefined your culture. What have you looked at as you think about culture in this remote work environment? How have you done it? What have you done? Let's see if we can tackle culture for a minute. Brian, let's start with you.
So great question. I think culture for so many in the SaaS world has always been the idea of, you know, you get free snacks in the office, and you have this idea around book clubs and other ideas in which you can create this environment where you're going to work and enjoying where you are. Now this environment where you go to work and enjoy where you are is in your own home, and you have to recreate that in some way, shape, or form. You know, we're blessed at AirCall to say that, you know, we've never really had a problem with culture. We are an employee first company that really tries to do anything to help the employee feel really comfortable. Things that we did early on, though, to try to, kind of get funky with the changes that were happening, we went ahead and we used to do a gym benefit, for instance, like a monthly gym benefit, and then gyms closed. But people still wanted to be healthy. They still wanted to work out. So we created a reimbursement to help it so that people can go and buy supplies at home, whether it be gym equipment or whatever, so that they could continue to have those same activities. We just did another benefit to help people build their home office and create some sort of environment for themselves to feel successful in and grow and prosper in. And sorry if you hear the beeping in blue. I'm in a weird office right now. I'm in the firehouse, if that makes any sense. So I apologize. Talking about adapting to home environments, I'm in right now. But you can't make this up. But that being said, we've done so much to try to get the employee into the headspace and physical space of being successful in whatever environment that they're in, so that they can focus and grow.
Yeah, yeah, you definitely need to be adaptable. So where do you find yourself right now, Brian? Are you actually at the office, or are you?
I'm a volunteer fireman on Long Island. I'm in the office that I get to do that. So I'm in the firehouse, and the alarm just went off. So I'm sure someone's running to a fire truck somewhere. It's happened on one of these, so you're
Look, we've definitely come to appreciate more and more through all this frontline workers. So, hey, if you've got to take that fire alarm, you just go do it.
There's plenty of people here. We'll be good.
Good. I was wondering, I'm like, what is that noise? All right, Chris, what would you add to that? Culture. How are you guys thinking about building culture in these different and challenging times?
I'll tell you, I was faced with, I would say, a triple challenge, because in addition to COVID, I came into this company in March of 2020, so right when the pandemic was hitting. So I took over this team just when we were deploying resources home. And then in the insurance industry, we just went through Hurricane Laura, and we have a pretty big office in Lake Charles where we're having to field a lot of those claims calls. So there's a lot more going on here than just the pandemic. And this is going to sound very simple, but in times like this, like, people want to know that they're being led by a human being. And I think Lindsay touched on it earlier, that coaching, it's not a transaction. Coaching is a conversation. And again, it's never been more important than now, because we're so dependent on technology more than ever to do our jobs. And if you think about how mediums of communication have changed over the years, like if you think back to, if you're old enough to remember to when the internet first went mainstream, right, in the mid 90s, like, most of the web pages read like magazines, right? And they were more essay based. Like now you click on a website and there's not just what you need to read, but there's links to videos and all sorts of bells and whistles and just all sorts of distractions. So the point is, all the technology we have now, it's built more to distract people than anything else. And your higher emotions, like your gratitude and your empathy, come from when you're in a calmer, more contemplative state.
Yeah.
So what I would say, I guess the crescendo of all that is, not every coaching session has to revolve around metrics or listening to calls. Sometimes coaching sessions means turning all this stuff off and just having a simple conversation about how things are going and feedback. So if you ask how I've transformed the culture through all three of those challenges, that's the first thing that comes to mind, is being able to incorporate the agendas of the people who are working for me into my own.
Yeah. I love this line. A couple of you use it. What is it? It's coaching is not a transaction. What did you say there?
It's not a transaction, it's a conversation.
Yeah.
And that, because if you're transactional in a coaching session, if it's all about that call flow or that checklist or those metrics, well, that's what your folks are going to take back with them. If you're transactional in a coaching session, more than likely the person you're coaching is going to be transactional when they're on the phone. Versus if you're more conversational, you're empathetic, you're listening to the other party, you're making room for their agenda, they're going to do the same in turn for the customers. I know that sounds very simple, and but it's I'd like to stick to a few simple things and keep it going. Like, and I've always considered a good coaching session, if you get 2 or 3 nuggets out of a coaching session, that's a successful session. I think sometimes, and I've noticed in call centers, sometimes newer managers in particular will listen to a phone call or review a few phone calls and think of 63 different things that they would have done differently on the call and nail the rep with all of it, and, and they tend to shut down when that happens. I think, I'll hear phone calls where, there might be several things I would have done different, but I'll stick to the top two. And if we make that progress, then that's great. You move on to the next one. So anyway, I'm sorry, I probably rambled.
Oh, no, it's interesting. And I just want to do a follow-up and maybe throw it out to the group, because coaching has just been something I've heard a lot about, specifically in the call center side of the house or in the inside sales or business development. People were so used to just wandering around and kind of miking in and, being able to do that kind of in-person, impromptu tap on the shoulder, that's very accustomed to that inside sales or call center world. That's obviously been eliminated. How have you been able to evolve some of that? Is that just come down to the technology, or what are some of the things you guys have found to take coaching to a next level when you can't do that quick informal catch up? And I throw that out just generally to the group. Anybody follow up on that?
Yeah, for us, especially as inside sales company, we're very sales oriented, customer centric company. So we've always had coaching. But like you said, it was, just trying to tap into calls to really understand what the customer is saying, possibly identify where there's some gaps. How we have transitioned is now we actually have our employees, our team members buying into their coaching, asking for that coaching. It was a change for us to try and manage through. So we did have to really focus on implementing exec vision for us, as well as the coaching plans, and really putting time and energy and making sure that we're holding people accountable to their own development as well. But as soon as we did that, it took about 6 months, but as soon as we did that, the results that we're starting to see, as well as the buy-in and the personal development that our sales individuals are seeing now that they have all this at their fingertips, it's incredible.
No, I like that. I mean, it's structure, organization, when the rep can see the benefit, I think it does make a huge difference. So good. Well, that's interesting. I just have heard so much about coaching. I appreciate that quickly. So let's continue on. I was thinking a little bit about this idea, sticking with this remote idea. You have this problem of boringness. We talked a little bit about it before. We do our stand-ups, but they're just the same Zoom thing. We try to do a happy hour on Zoom, but it got boring. That got boring. No one wants to spend their time after hours. And so teams are constantly trying to think of ways to really get out of that lull and move away from just Zoom. We need a term for this, like Zoomification, just 8 hours of Zoom, right? Like, how do you make it interesting? How do you keep it engaging? Brian mentioned a little bit earlier, maybe we'll start with you, Brian. Give us some specifics, things you've done to kind of keep the creativity, the juices flowing, people wanting to show up to these boring Zoom meetings that always happen.
Hashtag no Zoombies, right? So I've coined that. That's mine. And you're all not allowed to have it. I want payment.
Wait, hold on. What was that? No Zoombies?
Zoombies. Yeah. That's going to be a takeaway. So first off, we had, I'll take it a step back. We have a couple different connections to our partners that have made some really cool opportunities happen. I think we had to rethink. You're right. Like the same old happy hour or virtual happy hour or thing that was happening wasn't enough. We even had like virtual lunch table where you could just go in, and if you're eating lunch and you wanted to hang out with whoever you normally hang out with the office around that time, you could just go in and see who's there on the Zoom meeting and eat lunch and hang out with whoever's there. We've expanded that quite a bit. And I know teams, I won't just take it from us. There are colleagues of mine that have done some things like scavenger hunts in the local area, and like just little ideas to get out and about and outside and out of your little cubicle room of wherever you are and go and explore. And one of the things we did at AirCall early on was we helped formulate, we did two things early on. We helped formulate a fitness regimen that we had where we'd do like a group workout. And we had some partners that helped us with that. So we'd get a fitness trainer to come in, and anyone that wanted to join could. And, we did a morning workout with each other. And you know what? It had a really great positive effect. You accomplished something early in the day with the team. That was really cool. The other side, we started book clubs. We had We have one right now on the really important conversation around diversity and inclusion. And we're building communities around that to help share awareness towards that ever-growing, changing idea that needs to be constantly verbalized. And then on top of it, we have a sales one as well, where it's not just for salespeople, it's for anybody in the company where if they want to help sharpen some of their soft skills, they can come in and join a book club, read the book, and take the activities alongside it. But it's this idea that I think we can do not just activities that help formulate culture, but help formulate those soft skills and grow professionals that help, you know, change how people might choose to interact or even do that and not be a zombie.
I'm stolen. Consider it stolen. Cheryl, what would you add to that? What fun ways have you guys kind of looked at this?
So because we're in a call center environment and the specialists have to be on the phone, we do have daily huddles, but we had to think of something else too. So I think it's a little bit old school, just a little maybe, but we put together some contests. So especially at the beginning, like what was your favorite binge watch? And people would submit and let me know what it was. And I put a PowerPoint together and I picked a name and I sent them a gift card for everyone that participated, kind of thing. So we did like favorite binge watch, favorite song, favorite book, favorite dream vacation. That was a big one. But then when all was said and done as well, we're still getting customer surveys through all this. So good and bad. And there was some bad, let me tell you, for a little while there, because our call volume was so high and there was, long wait times for our customers to talk to an agent. But every time somebody got a really nice customer comment, I would send an old fashioned thank you note, a handwritten note, and I would thank them for it. I'd throw in like a $10 or $20 Amazon gift card and got their address and just sent it to their house. Something so simple. And the thanks that I got from the agent, because it was unexpected, it was just tremendous. It made me feel good as well.
Oh, wow, I like that idea. The binge watch definitely resonates. I didn't consider myself much of a Netflix person beforehand, but I am full addicted. I'm a full
Yep.
junk. So I can definitely relate to that. That's fun. All right, let's turn the table just for a minute. We talked some about the tactics and things you're doing. I don't remember if it was Cheryl. I think maybe it was Cheryl. You touched a little bit on this with the emotional side of engagement and some of the things you're finding. I think you talked a little bit about the isolation of the one individual. I've experienced that a lot. Some of my team here in New York City, right? Small apartments, isolation, not being able to have an office and stuff like that. It's become a little bit more difficult. So it isn't just the gift cards and it's not just about the tools and it's not just about the physical coaching. It's about how do we drive that emotional side that sometimes gets looked over on the engagement side of the house. Would love to hear about things maybe you guys have thought about or done. Cheryl, was I right? You talked a little bit about this before?
Yeah, so I think it's still really important to check in with everyone. So directly reporting to me as the leaders, but it's really important for me. I'll go up to people and and I know them by their names. I know their families, and it's been really, really hard for me, especially we have vendor sites as well. So we work with a couple of vendors in different countries, but and I've gotten to visit those sites previously, but getting to even know their names. So you got to get their buy-in. So getting their buy-in, they're going to want to work not just for the company, but for you, and they want to do well, whether it's NPS scores or customer satisfaction, whatever it is, they're going to want to do that. So it's really important still to this day. So if I'm pulling up a report and I see, Rose, oh my gosh, I got to check in with Rose, see how she's doing. I haven't talked to her in a week, but it's really important to continue to get that. And again, it's just getting the buy-in from everybody. You got to kind of make fun of yourself. You got to make jokes. You got to celebrate the wins. And it's still that human piece of it, even though it's virtual. This has been, again, for anybody that's a very social person and is out there and likes to come to work every day, like I still do. It's kind of been hard on people like us when somebody comes into the office that hasn't been here, whether they had a technology issue or just come in for the day for whatever reason. It's like old home week, like, oh my gosh, like you want to hug them. You can't do that either. But it's just that kind of thing. It's just, knowing that everybody, we're all in this together. We're all on the same side and we will get through this. Better days are coming.
Yeah. I like that. Sometimes it is just the small things, the little check-ins, they make a big difference.
Yeah.
And I think it is very real for everybody to know this isolation. It's tough. I think a lot of us are more people. So
I think so
Being
too.
home, being alone, it makes it challenging. So I don't think you can overcorrect almost on that enough. Lindsay, what would you add to this? Anything you guys have kind of experienced here?
You know, I agree with Cheryl completely. Checking in is first and foremost, making sure that you're putting a face, not only a voice to the check-ins, but or email or chat, but also just making sure you turn on your camera and you have those face-to-face conversations. And then just being vulnerable, really relating to the individual that you're speaking with and making sure that you understand where their stressors are, whether they're personal or professional, because there's a lot of change going on. They now have all these distractions at home, or may have some homeschooling demands that are creeping in on their work balance. So really just making sure that you understand where their stressors are and anything that you can do to help alleviate it. Well, even if it's just being a sounding board for them, just really understanding and relating to them and being vulnerable to what they're feeling as well, I think is also very important. And
Yeah,
then, oh, go ahead. Sorry, Gabe.
we often think about the coaching and going to them, but listening probably more is right.
Yeah.
I always love that mentor. He said, "You got two ears, one mouth. Use them like that." It's probably wise. That probably is more important than ever. And then,
Yeah.
sorry, what were you saying in addition?
No, and then also just making sure you're managing the expectations. So we have outlined expectations that were prior to everything going on and before people really were starting to have these different demands in their personal life, and just making sure that the expectations that we now have for their role and what we expect of their responsibilities are now relevant, and that we're consistently checking and adjusting and being flexible to those demands.
Yeah.
Gabe, may I add something here?
Please.
So, I think it's interesting too, is that it's not just the challenges or the stressors of being in an isolated room. I wish that was the only thing we have going on right now, because I think we'd have maybe a better handle on what's happening if that was the only thing. But you have everything else that our people are dealing with too. You have the happenings with George Floyd, Breonna Taylor. You have wildfires in California. You have political stressors galore. You have families with kids that don't know if they're going back to school. And you have families that have had COVID-19 impact. And I think that, when I said earlier, one of the things that we try to keep in mind at AirCall is to be an employee first environment. The reason behind that is that if we can get behind our employees and understand the environment of what they're going through, the changes that are happening in their world, and the stress that it's being imparted on their family, then we're doing our best to support them, and they're going to support us and our customers and everything else that we just expect them to do on their daily basis. I think that's really the expectation that we have on ourselves as leaders at AirCall and just even in our partners, is that we're making sure that people are okay and that are being taken care of, because there's a lot more going on than just what we've discussed so far.
Yeah, what are you talking about? There's no political stressors going on. Gee. Wow, you're right. There is a lot going on, and it does go beyond COVID. And I had my kids just started school this week. It's and that's been stressful for, I know, a lot of my peers. Managing that as these kids go off in different situations. So I think it comes back to listening. We need to be thinking about how we can bring these people in and make them part of the family, because it is an interesting world out there. Thanks for jumping in, Brian. So last point on this is just thinking about measurement. Sometimes employee engagement can be a little bit softer, or it's tougher to measure. Is it improving? Is it in a healthy place? Is it not in a healthy place? Curious what you guys are experiencing to try to actually get a barometer of this pocket's working or that pocket's not working, or we are actually moving in the right direction. Thoughts on this, Chris? Maybe we could start with you.
Well, it's interesting, but prior to COVID, there were no remote positions at TWFG. So I've had an opportunity to come in and help just build scorecards for my team. I've helped out with a couple other departments as well. And just knowing, and this is going to sound so simple, but just knowing what's expected of them and what's the quickest way to get there. Like in the case of my team, it's how many policies were sold, how many phone calls we're taking, external, internal, what's the call quality. And then we have an internal ticket system, where I'm helping to build some reports around that. So just knowing what you're looking for and being able to put it all in one place, just to put it simply. And we had, and just in a very short time, you know, we've been able to go from no reporting to having just a very accurate gauge on what's going on remotely just across our departments here. And teamwork is important on that too. Like I was able to tap a number of my peers in here. And that's another thing for us as managers, is not to forget that we have peers, that we have other department heads around us that are going through the same thing. Just to backtrack to an earlier point, my team huddles, every Friday I have a guest speaker, you know, where I'll have the head of another department or a manager from somewhere else just come in and get to know the team. And that just provides a little more connection, just to, not to get off of the question, but that's
I
think it's been a good way for people to get to know each other and get to know the company better too, because, you know, our jobs haven't gone anywhere. The challenges haven't gone anywhere. You know, people's aspirations haven't gone anywhere. I think the main thing that's changed is the median. And I've found that too. You know, when I dig into a coaching session or two, some people just want to dig in and just get to it, because it takes their mind off of everything else that's going on. And I think if you know your people, and again, I feel like I'm veering off the question, but
I think it all fits in that same category, and bringing those people in. But I do think being able to get a pulse does make a big difference, because it's harder. Again, you can't see the whites of their eyes. You don't know if they're down or not down. So finding different ways to actually get pulse on your organization and where people are, strengths and weaknesses, makes a difference. Lindsay, anything you'd add to this?
Muted. You're muted, Lindsay.
I'm sorry.
Oh, no, it's okay.
I mean, it's only 300 times a day, right?
You are just fine. Yep, there you go. We got you.
Are you good? Okay. So I would say, you know what, as we have moved remote and really trying to measure engagement and the different methods that we use, you know, through huddles and surveys and just roundtables with our individuals to really understand where some of our gaps are. And then just as leaders, really understanding what engagement means to us and really what we're looking to deploy as as an experience for our employees, and then being able to push it down through, you know, different activities, you know, and just being open to trying new things and checking and adjusting.
Got it. Yeah, no, that makes sense. We had a question from the audience, and maybe I'll pose this back to you, Lindsay. In your organization, have you found generational differences between engagement and or preference from working from home versus working at the office?
Absolutely. Even for buy-in for coaching, as especially in my more tenured inside sales reps, they're used to a certain way. They at Imperial, we're very metric driven for a number of years, and we really didn't clearly define what our culture was or what we wanted it to be as a company, and then also as a contact center. And now that we're trying to manage through that change over the last few years, we have struggled to earn their buy-in. And that's really where we decide where we're going to spend our time and what we can change and what we have that ability to change and what we can't. So if they choose not to participate in incentives, then that's their choice. If they choose not to participate in daily huddles or in Friday fun games or trivia or anything like that, that's their choice. But there is definitely a difference between the engagement and what they feel is engagement versus what someone of more tenure does at Imperial.
That makes sense. Anybody else want to answer that? How generational differences have affected kind of the work from home or engagement your company here for our question from Peter?
I haven't observed. Go ahead, Cheryl. Sorry.
I was just going to say, I've not seen much of it. So we have full spectrum here as well, from tenure, somebody that might be kind of my age versus, younger kids that I call my kids. But I think it's kind of been across the board, the folks that are my age, maybe it's I'm in New England, the driving thing, I don't know, but Rhode Islanders don't like to drive anywhere. I'll just put that out there. But I will say that I haven't seen it, like what Lindsay was just talking about. I haven't really seen it. It had really nothing generational to do about it. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say something similar. I don't know that it's so much generational as it is just the psychological makeup of the individual.
Right. Good point.
I think it's just traumatic across the board. And I think I said a little earlier, if you have 20 different people, that 20 different management styles thing really comes into play. I think it's probably important to stay away from generalizing and just assuming just because someone's on the older side that they don't want to adapt to the technology, that they don't enjoy working from home. And then conversely, I have some younger folks that can't wait to come back into the office. So I think it's important. It's critical just to stay away from generalizations. You don't want to make any assumptions in your own mind about what another person wants. I think what Lindsay said is key. Just being able to listen and hear what they're going through, because it's going to be different for everybody.
Yeah, no, I can see that. Lindsay, maybe this follow-up, Peter kind of asked a quick follow-up. He said, if you have that generational gap and someone isn't kind of buying in, how have you addressed it? Have you run into that where you've had to kind of address somebody not wanting to kind of participate in kind of the new culture that was being formed, or the new structure, or this work from remote? And so how did you address it? Any quick thoughts?
So I have had to do that. What I should have prefaced prior to my answer before is that actually majority of my tenure was actually remote prior to March. So they had actually been working remote for years prior. So they had already adjusted to, not having teammates around you for that uplift or for commenting, things like that. So they were already kind of used to this and kind of in their own vibe. And I think that might be why change was so difficult for them when we did move to this more coaching, behavior-oriented culture, because they weren't there to physically see it. But back to this question is, what we have had to, and have conversations. And basically what we do is we lay it out, and, we lay out what the issue is and have a conversation about what we can do as a team to close that gap. So, and honestly, a lot of that conversation falls back on them. You know what? I want them to help create that plan. I want them to come up with some of the ideas that they feel are relevant to closing the behavior gap, or metric, whatever it is. And then also, I need to know from their perspective what I can do to support them to close that gap. And write it out. We lay it out as a plan. We set up the check-ins, and that is how we have worked through some of that, and put more of the accountability back on them.
I like that. I think that, it's got to be a partnership, but everyone's got to step up, and nobody's happy about what's going on in a lot of ways, but we've got to just figure that out and take it from there. Right. So,
right.
Cool, you guys. Well, a lot of covered today. I want to see in our last 10 minutes, if we can get a little bit tactical. We talked a lot about the EX side of things, and I think we all understand that if you can get that employee up, you can get that engagement in the right direction, that translates into that better customer experience. The emotional side of it, being creative and in the kind of the post-COVID world. Based on all the different talk tracks we've hit, what would be that one piece of advice if you were talking to a leader who's looking to get that employee engagement up, to drive that customer engagement? What would you leave them with today? And I'd love to give each of you just maybe a minute to give your parting words or your closing wisdom. So Chris, let's start with you.
Well, not to belabor the point, but I'll say it one more time. Coaching is a conversation, not a transaction. And it's a short sentence, and I will leave it there. I will quote Mark Twain and say, I'm sorry for such a long note. I didn't have time to write a shorter one.
Oh, I think that's good, man. And that's a great statement to stick by. I don't know if who actually coined that, Chris, but I'm going to give you credit for it. So we'll go with that.
I think it was Mark Twain, but I could be wrong.
Brian, let's go to you next.
You know, there's a rule of thumb that I've always gone by with the teams that I've led, and the first rule of the team is be yourself on purpose, right? And I think that translates directly back to everything, whether it be how you're going to work and presenting yourself at work or how you're working with clients.
Yeah.
But I think right now it's super important that you allow someone to be the person they are. And they're in their own home, they're in an unfamiliar environment, and they're trying to figure out how the best way to come to work and bring their best selves to work. And you have to allow them the space to be able to do that, and trust that people want to do good work. Your people want to do good work, and they're not there to waste time. And if they are, you would have found out a long time ago. So I think that you allow them the space to be great, and then you expect that you can help meet them there.
Yeah. I think it's about meeting in the middle, man. It's all about compromise right now. I feel like I've had to change a lot of things that I do or want to do just to see how I can make people feel comfortable. And that's, there's a great country song, by the way, Brian, Meet in the Middle.
Meet in the middle. I'm writing it down.
No, I'm going to hit you up after. I think it's Diamond Rio. You might want to check that one out. All right, Lindsay, over to you.
Listen. I cannot stress enough how important it is to listen to your team members to really understand professionally, personally, what's happening. Because if you don't have them on your team and they're not engaged, that is coming through to your customers every single day.
Okay. Yep. And then closing, Cheryl, your thoughts?
So I think probably the most important thing is you just got to remember to keep checking in with everyone. And, I think probably many of you on this call have vendor sites as too. They're just as important. Don't forget about the people that are sitting in your vendor sites and that are helping out as well. So, for me, it's really important to continue celebrating wins. That's a huge part of this. Making jokes and, the emails that fly around sometimes get ridiculous, but it's kind of like, it's fun. And, again, making fun of each other kind of thing. And of course, a very nice way, again, old fashioned New England bank. But to remind everybody, we're all in this together. I think it's 2020 has been one heck of a year. When we started the call, I can't remember who's in Denver. Like, are you kidding me? You're getting snow and it's only September, that it's like, it just keeps pulling punches on us, and it's 2021 can't get here fast enough. That's my opinion.
I'm
Not just snow, but thunder snow.
Yeah, right. No kidding.
I am so hoping, Cheryl. I'm glad you ended with that, because I'm ready for this year to be over. But I am truthfully, as I think Brian was alluding to it, I'm cautiously optimistic about 2021. There does seem to be some things ahead that might be interesting, but I think you do have to be optimistic, because that's all you've got sometimes is a good attitude. So
We all have an opportunity to make Q4 huge right now. So let's go do it.
Yeah, that's right.
yes,
Absolutely.
we're not even there yet. All righty, everybody. Well, thanks so much for joining as we talk about employee engagement and how that drives customer engagement. Thank you to each of the panel members for joining and taking their time out of their busy days. And then again, thank you to the sponsors for putting this on so that we can all jump in and see if we can't help each other in these interesting times that we have. So as Brian said, hope you have a great Q3, even a better Q4. And here's wishing to 2021 being awesome. So thanks, everybody, and have a fantastic day.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Gabe.
you.
Thanks, everyone.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, everybody. Thank you.
Bye, Reed.